This is how I've seen buyers who were paying attention walk away with over 6 figures in equity. A few months ago, a client of ours lost a court bid on a White Rock condo by about $3,000, just 3 grand. And the person that beat them is about to walk into about $60,000 to $70,000 worth of equity almost overnight. Not by flipping it, not by renovating it, but by understanding something most buyers in the Lower Mainland have never even heard of. In today's video, I'm breaking down 3 investment plays I've watched create the biggest equity gains in Surrey and White Rock, including one that put almost $150,000 into someone's pocket on a single transaction. These are not your average buy a condo and rent it out strategies either. These are the plays serious local investors quietly use, and they work anywhere in the Lower Mainland. But every single one of them comes with a catch that can wipe out your entire profit if you miss it. And stick around, because later I'll show you a ranch or townhome complex right here in South Surrey that might be sitting on its owner's biggest payday yet. You only get one chance to buy or sell your next home. Let's get it right. Okay, let's talk about what this actually is, because when most people hear real estate investment, they picture 2 things. They picture cash flow, buying a condo, renting it out, collecting a check every month, or they picture equity, buying something that jumps in value. And everybody wants both. But here's the reality. In the Lower Mainland, it's getting incredibly hard to accomplish both things at the same time. Prices are so high relative to rents that most rental properties barely break even, and plenty lose money every single month. Really, one of the only ways that I see people make cash flow work is to own a property for a long time, paying down that mortgage year after year, or they are fortunate enough to be able to start with a big down payment. So around here, the real money almost always comes from one place, and that's equity. Buying something and holding it for the long haul, buying it for less than it's truly worth, or buying something that's about to be worth a whole lot more. Now, before you jump in and say it, no, I'm not talking about foreclosures. Just because a property is a foreclosure does not mean it's a good deal. Some of them sell for full market value, and they come with risks that most buyers don't see coming. We've actually got a full video on this channel breaking down exactly how foreclosures work, and I'll link it at the end. And I'm also not talking about fixing and flipping. Flips look great on TV, but in the real world, you're paying holding costs every single month, the mortgage, the taxes, the insurance, plus all the upgrades and renovations that you might do. And a couple of surprise delays can eat your entire profit. What I'm talking about today are longer plays, the quiet ones, the ones where the equity gain isn't $15,000 or $20,000, it's 50, 100, $150,000 or more. All right, lean in real close because you need to hear this. It's disclaimer time. One thing needs to be said. These strategies I'm about to share with you are situation dependent, building dependent, and very much risk tolerance dependent. What worked for one buyer could go sideways for another. Always, always, always advise with the professionals of your choice before acting on anything in this video. Don't be going and doing anything silly without talking to a professional, okay? All right, the first one starts with something nobody wants to think about: an insurance claim. Here's how it works. Something major happens in a building, a fire, a flood, serious water damage, could be anything. And then suddenly the owners can't live in their units. Most people have insurance that covers their costs while the building gets repaired, but not everyone. Some owners don't have coverage, and others simply can't afford to carry a mortgage, strata fees, and rent somewhere else all at the same time for what could be a year or more of repairs. And that creates a situation where somebody genuinely needs to sell, and they need to sell now. And I want to be really clear about something, because I know what some of you might be thinking. This is not about taking advantage of people. These owners need to free up their money, and they need to do it quickly. That's their reality. And if they could afford to hold on and wait it out like everybody else in the building, they probably would. A buyer stepping in is actually the solution to their problem, not the cause of it. So here's the play. You buy the unit at a price that reflects the damage and the uncertainty. Then you hold it while the insurance claim repairs the building. Remember, the building's insurance is doing that work, not you. And when the repairs are done, you're holding a fully restored unit in a fully restored building, one that you bought at a steep discount. And that gap between what you paid and what it's worth when the dust settles, that's your equity. But Here's the catch that I promised you. Financing these is not like financing a normal condo, as an example. Lenders see a damaged building and they get nervous. So you're often looking at higher interest rates, bigger down payments, or alternative lenders altogether. That means your carrying costs can be significantly higher than you'd expect. And if you haven't run those numbers down to the dollar with contingencies before you buy, that beautiful equity gain can shrink in a hurry. You have to know your cost cold on these ones. Play number two is this, and this is a real story that I kind of teased at the beginning of this video. Major strata repairs under foreclosure. Now, this one takes a minute to wrap your head around, but stick with me because this is where that $60,000 to $70,000 windfall came from. So here's the situation. Sometimes a strata building needs massive repairs. We're talking about new roofs, new plumbing, building envelope, those really big ticket items. And the strata passes what's called a special levy, where every owner has to pay their share, which can be tens of thousands of dollars per unit, depending on what the issues are. Well, as you can imagine, some owners simply can't pay it. And when they can't pay the levy and can't pay the mortgage, the property ends up in foreclosure. And here's the part that almost nobody understands. That levy, all that money that's owed to the strata for the repairs, is assessed against the unit. And when that unit sells through the foreclosure process after the bill is due, the sale can clear the slate. The proceeds pay out what's owed, and the new buyer steps into a unit where the major repairs are already funded and underway. So think about what you're actually getting here. You're buying a price that reflects a building under construction, staff holding up, everything looking rough. And on the other side of that renovation, you own a unit that is in essentially a rebuilt building. New roof, new envelope, tens of thousands of dollars of work that you never had to write a check for. The catch, you have to live through the renovation, construction noise, scaffolding, tarps, the whole experience. Or you could rent it out to carry your costs while that work gets done. Either way, you need the stomach and the plan to hold through the mess because the payoff comes when the work is finished and the building re-rates in the eyes of every future buyer. This happened exactly to some clients of ours in White Rock. There's a building here that's going through this right now. It's covered in tarps. We had a client that had an offer in on a unit and it went to court because foreclosures in BC get decided in a courtroom. And they lost to a higher bidder by about $3,000. $3,000. And the buyer who won, well, once that building's repairs are complete, at the time when we ran the numbers, they're looking at somewhere in the range of $60,000 to $70,000 of equity almost overnight. That's the margin between understanding this play and not even knowing that it exists. Play number three, and this is my personal favorite. Hey, before we get into that, quick heads up. If you're even thinking about buying a home anywhere in BC, you'll want to grab a copy of our free guide, 18 Grants and Rebates for Home Buyers. We pulled together every program we could find from federal, provincial, and even some lesser known local ones, plus links, tips, and simple ways to actually use them. Most of these are buried, confusing, or completely missed by buyers, and this could save you thousands. It's free, and you can download it right now by using the link in the description of this video. Old stratas sitting on big land right in the path of development. This is the longest play of the three, but it might be the biggest payday of them all. So first, you need to understand a term that developers use all the time: highest and best use. Every piece of land has a use that generates the most value. And when a property's current use doesn't match what the land could be, there's money sitting there waiting to be unlocked. Here's what I mean. Picture a townhome complex built 50 years ago, or even maybe older. Single level, ranchers, big green lawns, beautiful mature landscaping, tons of space between the units. Lovely place to live. Everybody loves it. But look at that land that those townhomes are sitting on through a developer's eyes. That complex might have 30 homes sitting on land that today's zoning would allow for 300 homes to go on. The land underneath is worth dramatically more than the townhome sitting on top of it. That's the highest and best use gap, and it's exactly what you're hunting for. So let me give you a real example right here in South Surrey. There's a rancher townhome complex near Semiahmoo Town Center. Gorgeous property, those classic single level homes, beautifully landscaped, the kind of place people love living in, and right near the city center. It's a great location. But those units are getting close to 50 years old. And under Surrey's 2050 official community plan, that site is designated for low rise density. So you've got aging buildings on a huge piece of land in an area that the city has already said should hold far more homes than it does today. When a site like that eventually sells to a developer, the owners aren't paid for an old townhouse. They're paid for their share of that development site. And that number can be a completely different universe. This isn't theory, by the way. We had clients in Richmond whose complex did exactly this. It's called a Strata Windup, where the owners vote to sell the entire property to a developer as one package. And when it went through, they cashed out at what we'd estimate was around 20% above what their units were worth on the open market. Now, here's the kicker. Their building had major expenses coming down the pipe, money that they were going to be forced to spend anyway. Instead of writing those checks, they walked away with a premium. But as I kind of alluded to, and this is a big one, nothing about this play is ever guaranteed. Strata Windup needs the owners to vote in favor of it. In BC, that means at least 80% of them. If the votes aren't there, it doesn't happen, no matter what a developer offers. And while you wait, you're an owner in an aging complex, which can mean special levies, repairs, and real updating costs along the way. You have to buy these knowing you might hold for years. You might have to pay to maintain the place, and the windfall might come on someone else's timeline. This play is for people who understand exactly what they're getting into, which is kind of the whole point of this video. And none of these three ideas are hypotheticals. I've watched these play out. Plays that put 50,000, 70,000, even over six figures of equity into people's pockets. In fact, one of these deals, one single deal, generated almost $150,000 in equity in just 5 months. That's not a decade of collecting rent checks. That's one smart purchase made by someone who understood exactly what they were looking at. But here's the thing you've probably picked up on by now. Every single one of these plays comes with a catch. Higher financing costs, living through a renovation, having to carry a property, or maybe a windfall that only arrives if 80% of your neighbors vote yes. These are not deals you stumble into. They're deals you find because you know what you're looking for. You run the numbers cold, building contingencies, and you have someone in your corner who's actually done it before. So if you're sitting on equity right now, or you're an investor who's tired of the same old advice, and you want to talk about what a play like this could look like for you, whether that's here in Surrey, White Rock, or really anywhere in the Lower Mainland, there's a link in the description of this video to book a time directly in my calendar. No pressure, no sales pitch, just a real conversation about whether one of these strategies actually fits your situation. And earlier in this video, I mentioned foreclosures, the thing that gets so many would-be buyers curious and just as many in trouble. If you want to know how foreclosures actually work in BC, how the court process goes, why my client lost by $3,000, and how you can compete in one, that video is coming up right now. Foreclosures in Surrey and other areas of the Lower Mainland are starting to show up at an alarming rate. You've seen the headlines. Big developers are defaulting. Mortgage delinquencies are quietly rising. And naturally, buyers, especially investors or anyone sitting on the sidelines, are starting to wonder, are foreclosures where the real deals are hiding?